Another edition of the Winning Plays podcast is here. My name is Brian Robb, bringing in the big guns as co-host today. Chris Forsberg.
I don't know about that.
I mean, this is as big as it gets on the Winning Plays pod. Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston.
Usually people only call now when like Robb has a big night or a big moment. It's like, oh, we're doing a Robb episode. We should get Forsberg. Otherwise, it's my phone doesn't ring. I don't take it personally.
That didn't even come to my mind here as I contacted you, so I'm offended by that. And to be fair to Robb, he probably didn't even get official block there because
I never checked the box. Did they?
I didn't look, but I assume time had expired before the shot was released, so I don't.
It was very close. Rewatching it, I remember remarking, I wonder if he even got it off. I think he did, but at that point, it's not like they sit there and review it and go back because it's just whatever, game's over anyway. But yeah, that and like Jaylen, when Jaylen did the fronting and beat in the post, I don't know if he got credited with the block on was it Shake who drove or something like that.
Yep.
I remember someone on Twitter was like, hey, did he get a block? I never went back and looked. Look, that's the bottom line. Celtics played good enough defense that I don't even care if someone got credited with a block or not. It's a rare positive edition of the Winning Plays podcast.
Well,
wait, maybe not.
I mean, hold on, hold the fort there. No,
all right. I thought that was my job.
As I'm checking through the box score to see if that happens. Well, let's start with the defense there because there's a lot of things we don't know about this team as they've gotten fully healthy here. One thing we seem to know now, and you know what, you're right. 0.1 seconds here in the box score that Robb did get that block. So you win.
Good job, NBA.
NBA keeping it right, keeping Chris Forsberg happy. The defense here is, I think the Celtics are up to 5th overall in the league after that slug. And we're kind of, are we back to 90s basketball here with the Celtics or like early 2000s, which, you know, it's a nice change of pace here, but it's not easy on the eyes in terms of quality last night of what a slugfest would be a nice way of putting it. But I guess this is like, these were the games that they were losing last year. Like they would, you know, they couldn't even get the stops in these instances when the offense would always go down. So now at least they're getting the stops when it matters, at least some of the time.
Progress, right? But I'm with you. I think I've used the word rock fight like 94 times this season because they're all just like horrifically awful to watch, 92 to 88 type games. And it would be fun if the Celtics could play better offense. And I think they were going to have to do anything this season. This sort of defense, even in the playoffs, will only take you so far. But what I liked is, what have we talked about like all season, is that when they've needed to make a play to win a game, they haven't been able to do it. And especially that's mostly offensively, like the sets have not been good. They have like devolved to isolation basketball. But last night they dug in, and I think we all had that sinking feeling like, oh my God, they were up 4 with 30 seconds to go. Are they going to blow this thing? And that defense on the final play was as crisp a possession as they've played all season long. I mean, from Al hounding Tobias out to the mid-court circle so that they can't get to Embiid, who, you know, is trying to work Jaylen in the post, to Smart staying with Seth Curry, to Robb scrambling out after being diligent in protecting the paint. Like, everything went right. And it's just another, it's so funny. Like, the final offensive possession was so bad and hammers home why the offense is so bad. And then the final defensive possession was so good and hammers home why they're so good defensively. And so I hope they can find some semblance of I don't know. I want to throw that back at you. How do they fix this offense? Like, what is the key? I know I said we were going to be positive here, and it took one question for me to swing it. But like, what is the easy fix to get making this offense look better?
Well, benching the guy that's shooting 41% from 3 on the season probably didn't help on Wednesday night, and that's Romeo Langford, who isn't obviously an offensive juggernaut by any means, but he is hitting threes.
Second best catch and shoot guy on the team behind Grant Williams.
Right. And so if you're benching your other 2 guys, understandably so, in Pritchard and Nesmith for the time being, if Langford's the odd guy out now, I mean, we can kind of, we'll punt this to later in the pod now in terms of like big picture, like what's going to go on here as trade season approaches.
Just we'll spoil it real quick. He'll be back. Like, Ennis isn't going to play big minutes every night.
But I don't know, like, they're playing Utah Friday. That's Whiteside there. So that's like a classic canter.
And if they're going
matchup.
double big, they gotta have another backup big man. So all right, maybe I walk that back. But I do think on a normal night, especially when you have 2 back-to-backs coming up, I do think we'll see Romeo a little bit more. I think he'll go to 10 instead of 9.
Right. I agree with that. But it was jarring just to see a guy that the one guy who had been consistent for them all year long in that spot get the DMP coach decision. And again, a matchup like that's what you have Cantor for essentially of those.
Can I tell you a funny story before we go?
Freedom, excuse me.
So I have to do those WebEx hits in the third quarter where I typically go into a night. I'm like, let's see what happens. Like I'll have an idea, but so last night I had kind of 2 things in my head. Josh Richardson from the mid range, who has been like just electric, even though I hate that shot. I was like, maybe we'll spotlight that against his old team. Maybe, and then he bricked like 3 mid-range jumpers in the first 12 minutes. I was like, all right, well, we're not doing that. And I was like, well, there's always Romeo because Romeo's defense has been outstanding. And now you're getting the benefit of at least a catch and shoot guy on a team that desperately needs people who can knock down shots. And of course he gets a DNP. So I was like, damn it, what do I do now?
So what'd you go with?
I ended up doing Marcus Smart, which was great because I mean he had I think he had 7 assists through the first 26 minutes of the game. And right before we're waiting to come on and do the hit, he turned the ball over like 3 times in 4 possessions. And I said, man, I just can't get this one tonight, but we still had fun with it. I want to give you the same quiz I gave Abby. Jason Tatum is obviously his most common assist on the season. I think like 28 this year.
Yep.
Do you know who his second is? And second and third?
For Smart, I would say Robb would be second.
Obviously, if I'm bringing it up, it's
Robb.
Then who's number 3? I was surprised by 3.
Who's number 3? It is Schroeder.
Ooh, it's not. I think Schroeder's like 5th. It's Grant Williams.
Yeah.
And again, like it shows the benefit of Marcus doesn't have a lot of dudes to pass to, and that connection has worked. What I thought interesting, I didn't have time to get this in, was that Jaylen's like super low. Now that makes sense somewhat because he's missed 8 games and with the hamstring and hasn't been himself. But last year, the Marcus to Jaylen assist combo was like, until Jaylen got hurt, it was one of the best in the NBA. And it's weird that they haven't figured that out yet this year, but it's just weird because Jaylen's not himself and really hasn't looked at himself since that opening night. So they've something they've got to figure out. But yeah, I totally derailed this conversation. You were talking about the offense.
No, I mean you just brought up Jaylen, so I think that's a good place to start with the offense right now. I mean Tatum's situation is what it is. Like he's seeing doubles, like he's not shooting efficiently. It's this case for a lot of guys around the league right now. I don't think that's really like Jason play better. Like okay, like that's. I think that's eventually going to happen, but I don't think that's necessarily something you harp on in terms of like the offensive structure. Jaylen Brown's the far more interesting situation right now from the standpoint of do you sit him back down for a little bit right now because that's pretty much your only option here. You're not going to do it. I mean, you're not going to reduce his role or anything if he's playing. I feel like so. Do you say okay, you just got to keep. If he wants to keep going through and he insists that like, hey, like I'm getting better, even though it doesn't look like it. Like I don't know what the push and pull of that situation is.
I mean, and the other thing is, and like selfishly, I think about this with every guy who is out there. Does he have another playing time clause in there? Like he triggered it last year, getting to 65 games before he shut down. And well, I think that was Jaylen wanting to stay out there, but I also think you're acutely aware of when you're going to get $1 million extra, and like it's just part of it. And anyone who says that's ridiculous for a guy who makes that much money, it matters. I'm just telling you, it does. And so if he's got another 65 game trigger in there, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to play. I don't know what the balance is. I think through 3 quarters last night, I said he shouldn't be out there, especially when he smoked when Robb had the huge block that was like an outlet pass and he missed the layup and he just didn't have any explosion. That's when I said, man, that's just not Jaylen Brown. But then him against Embiid was unbelievable in that 4th quarter. And I said, he's at least trying. And, I don't know what the balance is there. And, it might just have to be an eyeball test. Like I'd be really surprised if he plays both nights of the back-to-backs. And so do you trot him out there against his best friend, Spider Mitchell, and try to get as much as you can in Utah and then ramp him down against Portland when they'll be shorthanded? Or do you play him against, I don't know, it's probably going to be up to Jaylen to decide if he wants to be out there, but I do think they have to at least think about, if he just doesn't look himself, and if the only way to get this thing better is to ramp him down, the one thing I keep thinking about too is you look at one of the breaks in the schedule, 2 days before that LA series, you shut him down for the next 2 games, you're getting almost a week to rest him up before that LA game. So yeah, I don't know. There's no easy decision, especially when you're in the predicament the Celtics are, where every game matters and every game this month matters. So it's hard to kind of gauge. If you were Ime, would you play him?
I'd play him I wouldn't play the back-to-back for sure. He's got good history in Utah. Let him play in Utah.
Yeah.
He'll probably, he likes hitting dagger threes out there.
I forgot about that. That's right. Yeah. That was like one of his coming out moments.
Yeah. That was like that crazy trip, post Kyrie injury, that when his first year there. But yeah, it's a push and pull there. It's good to see him. I mean, he's not forcing it too much, I think, offensively. But like you said,
there have been times.
That's true. Like
there are times when I've literally yelled at the TV to move the ball. Like it's a little too. I'm trying to, and I get it. I'm trying to get myself going, but yeah. But I understand your point. Again, in the fourth quarter last night, I thought he got more deferential, and I think he's realizing that if he just doesn't have it, he has to do that.
Right, and that was something where the awareness of those guys coming into play more as they kind of figure out this offense and figure out what, Ime wants in those type of situations. That's coming more full circle, and that should help this team in the long run. But yeah, I'd say play him in Utah. You probably can play Portland, beat Portland now pretty comfortable. That's not an easy game in Portland, but Lillard's out there. So that's certainly a game that you need to win on this trip to have it be a successful trip. And now that everyone's back, you have the luxury of getting away without having Jaylen and still having, a very capable guy in Romeo Langford. You don't even have to go down to Nesmith. You can just say, oh yeah, Romeo, you're playing.
Or you could go to Nesmith. I mean,
or you could go. Yeah, you go to both of them. You go out and Pritchard. Hey, it's in Portland, baby. Go score 90 points.
The rejuvenation process for Peyton Pritchard. You have to play in that game.
You'd think so. You'd think that'd be Ime, given his roots there, would at least give him a shot, at least for a first half stint. But yeah, that's a tough one. From whether that's the medical staff or Ime, or even where the front office gets involved, there being like, hey, let's we're not liking how Jaylen's looking right now. Let's just
And they did tread cautiously the first time around with this thing. I thought that was way more of a break than we thought he'd get, especially when he started talking about potentially coming back that Monday night or whatever of that road trip. So yeah, as painful as it might be to have to weather without him, they know how to do it, and it doesn't really impact you too much defensively. You do wish you had that offensive weapon, but I think long term they need him upright, and so whatever they got to do, because he was really good at the start of that first game. And even that first really week, I thought he had his moments, but they got to find out how to get Jaylen back to that all-star level.
Do you know, just speaking of minutes in general, do you know where Tatum ranks in the NBA in minutes right now?
So it was like fourth for a while behind like Randall, and I'm trying to think who else was on there. I remember doing this earlier. At one point, the Celtics, because of all those overtime games, had, I don't know if it was Brown, maybe Tatum, Smart, and someone else was in there. Schroeder? I don't know. But I don't know. Is he still high? Is he still fourth?
Try second. Second in the NBA right now.
That's kind of crazy.
So
Ime Thibodeau out here.
Right?
Is it Julius Randle number one?
No, it's someone you'll never guess who's number one. He's at 38.3 minutes. He's in the Celtics division. The Celtics faced him recently in the last week.
Brooklyn. The kid they called up from the G League from Brooklyn.
No. The Celtics played him on Sunday, actually, in Toronto.
Toronto. Oh, wait, I'm not even sure who Van Vliet.
Yeah, it's averaging 38 minutes a game.
That's crazy.
That's nuts. But it's not only. So Tatum's at 36.6 too. Anthony Edwards 3. Someone I would never have guessed to be 3 there too.
I wouldn't have guessed that either.
Whatever, Right. Westbrook's 4, Bridges 5. So
LOL.
Right. I mean, that's a whole different can of worms we'll get into later.
But there's no Knicks in the top 5 anymore. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Randall here.
I was gonna say he was number one for like the first 15 games of the season.
He's down to 16, 35.2.
Wow. Tibbs. A softer, gentler Tom Thibodeau.
No,
I would have. Good thing he didn't play that game. I would have been terrible at that one. Family Feud style. We would have I would have been buzzed out really early.
But so you have their team there, and then not too far out of the top 20 is Marcus Smart as well. Yeah. And so as Ime, you understand this in the last couple of weeks as this team was trying to get its footing. I feel like, Ime, no surprise, leaning hard on the veterans, hard on the guys you could trust here. But especially as we go forward in this trip now, and you just look at the numbers, Tam is in a different category, but Smart, Smart's obviously valuable, but like, is he definitely playing 35 minutes a night valuable? Like when you're at full strength, like not just from a offensive perspective, or just being like, hey, rest Marcus a little bit. He's someone who gets hurt a lot. Like, so, and you have, again, guys on the bench who are willing to play. So I wonder what the balance is going to be and what you'd want to see from that standpoint, from a coaching standpoint on this trip here, and balancing, obviously going for these wins in an important stretch versus not leaving the other guys to just whatever G League practice action for the next month.
And unfortunately, I think it's just this stretch is so vital for them to prove to Brad and maybe to themselves that they're going to be contenders, that I don't see a throttle down coming down anytime soon. Again, maybe on those back-to-backs, you stretch the rotation out a little bit, but like I'm figuring Tatum's going to play. You heard Brad even allude to it on the radio this morning when they were talking about Jason. He's like, well, Jason plays and Jason compete. And like and what he means is Jason has no choice. Like he's one of the only healthiest dudes who's played every game. Him and Grant, I think, are the only guys that have played them all. And they've just got to play because you need him so much for your offense right now. And I don't know when his first break will come. Maybe if they're lucky enough to win a couple games and get a 4-game winning streak, maybe you can find a day on a back-to-back. Maybe you look for an opponent who is a little undermanned, like the Lakers. I don't know, but it's a delicate.
No chance he takes days off in December. Like there's no easy game on that schedule.
and I'm trying to think what the first possible day off they have. Even I had sort of circled Minnesota at the end of the month, and now Minnesota's playing good. So. Right. I don't know. Maybe you leave him home on one of those random one-off trips or whatever, but there's going to be no easy spots here to find it. Even Marcus, it all depends on how Schroeder's playing too. Like Schroeder wasn't great for the most of last night, and then had the crunch time buckets when they needed them, and then had one really bad crunch time possession, but. Or was it 2? I don't even remember at this point.
He had one bad one where he just threw up the air ball.
The whole team. Again, I don't hold bad possessions against players because they're all bad possessions at times with this team. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you there. I would say that I hope these guys got their cardio in because in order to look up on January 1st and give Brad Stevens the confidence not to start dealing away pieces, I think they have to be, probably 10-5 in December. And that's going to be tough as hell.
But so let's say it's a middle of the road December then. Ooh. And they go, which honestly for them where they're at is not the worst thing in the world, given how tough this schedule. If they can, I'd say even a 2-3 West Coast trip is like fine. Given the level of competition there, if you can, you beat the Blazers, you beat the Clippers, and you're competitive in those other games, like that would be I guess acceptable.
That's the key in for me is just like competitive. If they get their doors blown off and they're 8-7 this month, then I'm feeling less optimistic coming out. I guess the one thing that could save them is if the rest of the Eastern Conference is just a jumbled mess, they might still be, 5th, 6th in the Eastern Conference, even with the 500 month. But it just comes down to, all right, already got your doors blown off by the Nets. You had to go to overtime against a Bucks team that didn't have Giannis, Middleton, or Lopez. Yeah. And even Philly, all right, that wasn't the Philly you're going to see. Like Joel Embiid, I'm assuming is not going to go 3 for 16.
One of its worst games ever.
Right. And I think some of that is COVID. I do think some of it is give the Celtics some credit there. Their defense has been great, but if I'm trying to slot where the Celtics sit in the East right now, because of their offensive struggles, I'm not overly bullish right now. And I do think, it's going to come down to when you start to look up and, what's the plan? Are you digging in and just riding this thing out? Or are you just going to, ride it out with Schroeder when there's no path to retaining him? Are you taking Josh Richardson into next year or into the summer? I just think they have a lot of hard decisions. And they have to have a good December to make it easy for Brad to make that decision.
Well, given this team's track record, nothing's going to come easy in terms of like making a decision. But yeah, so let's play it out though. if you are Brad Stevens here, you don't get the clarity. It's a 500 month. Oof. You're still again, the East is still wide open. Like the Nets and the Bucks, maybe they separate themselves a little bit, but everyone else with Miami, the injury to Bam,
right?
Chicago comes back down to earth. Everyone else is like kind of in 2-3 games with each other. So in theory, you could go in either direction.
I pull the plug.
You pull the plug. Yeah. So, and you just pull it with the veterans, or are you pulling it with like even maybe moving some of the younger guys as part of a bigger deal? Like where do you look to do?
So I guess it all depends on what the landscape is. Are there big names that become available? Is there a disgruntled veteran that you're like, okay, we're not going to be in the Bradley Beal hunt. Let's actually make a pursuit for this. But that's going to take a lot of stuff lining up.
Right.
I think my big fear is that they don't make a decision in January or February. They're just like, all right, let's just see how this goes. And then we get to April, May, you're bounced in round 2 or earlier. And all of a sudden you didn't turn Schroeder into anything. You still got to figure out Al and Richardson. And like, you didn't develop your young guys. Like, I'm worried that this is how teams stay on the sort of middling path. Like you've got to sometimes make tough decisions to figure out how to advance forward. You have to sometimes go backwards to go forward. And so, like, look, if over the next 25 days, the offense looks great or at least shows some sort of improvement, I'm fully willing to like be all on board on them going for it. If it doesn't, and again, I think you look up and you just have to be honest with yourself. Now, here's what I like. Brad Stevens didn't mess around in whenever it was May, June, when he traded Kemba. And that was hard for him. And I know we can look now and say, oh, that was like, what a trade. He made the right move. But like in the moment, that wasn't necessarily an easy decision. And he did it with the idea of trying to free up whatever comes next. And, the fact that Al's been great has just been a bonus.
Right.
But, okay, he's going to have to make the same sort of bold decision by probably mid-January. And, that might mean, what kind of market do your guys have? Like, is Marcus your point guard of the future? Is, like what pieces work with the Jays? Even if it's just clearing veterans so that Nesmith and Pritchard can actually play and figure that part of it out, like something that Danny Ainge probably should have done to coax Brad Stevens into playing them, it might need to be done for him with Ime. And so, and like, look, I know it's not a fun outlook, but it's just a realistic one and one that teams aren't willing to face. And I do think, I hope Brad's a little bit more realistic with what he wants to do, because otherwise, we come back next year and it's this year 2.0 where okay, maybe add somebody, but where are we going? What are we doing? And, there's a lot of question marks.
It's funny as you're just kind of laying that out, and I'm like just thinking about what they have and what this team has looked like this year. Something just came to my mind. If you are going to pull the plug, like a name that you should absolutely be trying to shop at the deadline as like an impact player, Al Horford.
Yeah, I mean, talk about value never going to be higher. I think we saw a little bit of regression on that last trip. I thought he wasn't great. In San, they like went right at him.
He cost him that. I mean, that was Ime's like, and he learned from it the next game. Right. Kind of like, all right, we're gonna ride off the bench. We're gonna ride if Freedom was obviously much better in that game than Horford.
I love that you got it right on the first.
I got the no. I've messed that up 5 times already. You haven't been listening. But yeah, so that was a Horford's been amazing, and then nights like Wednesday night against the Sixers when he's bringing it defensively, that's fantastic. But
first off, okay, and again, this is a winning plays pod from January. But one, is anyone trading for Al Horford? And
it's Al Horford, yes. I think, yeah. If you want an impact player, again, it depends. Are the Celtics going to get value for him? No. Are the Celtics going to be able to deal him if he's playing like this for another month?
Can you imagine that conversation though? And maybe it changes. Maybe if you are middle of the road, Al is just like, hey, I want to go. I'm 35. I want a chance here to compete. Right. After all the failures and or coming up short in Atlanta and obviously Boston not working out, Philly and all that. So I totally get like why he'd potentially be in on it, but also he really likes it here, and you're like, hey, big guy. So we're trading you to Philly, or I don't know, like whoever the hell. Whoever the hell they're going to
some team out west, some team out. I feel like there is some team
good weather.
Right. I mean, the Bulls probably like, yeah, we'll take Al Horford. That's
They need more big men.
They need more big men in the middle next to Boost. Yeah, I mean, it is when you go. There is no clear cut being like that team is an Al Horford away from being, a clear cut contender. But at the same time, if he keeps playing like this, and if it's a weak trade market, like Al Horford would be a very appealing player to a lot of teams around the league. And so, but you're right. Is Brad Stevens going to be quote unquote heartless enough to be like, hey, Al, welcome back?
Yeah,
huge part of our plans here. Actually.
It had to be part of the conversation when he came here too, like that he just had to be realistic. Like, we're hoping this thing works out, but if it doesn't, there's going to be hard choices. And your salary, part of the reason we traded for you, like the big banner we're waving when it happens is that future flexibility and doing. So I do think he's got to at least be aware of it. I think part of the reason he's playing so hard is he wants it to work here.
Yeah.
And again, I know we default to maybe that's I'm leaning more towards that being the more likely path than the other, just based on what I've seen. But I also somewhat feel like, look, he's played way above what I expected right now, and I don't know if that's sustainable. And that game against San Antonio sort of showed it. There's just going to be nights where the knees don't move as quick as they did against Philly when you have a little extra motivation. So it could be a little bit more of a roller coaster. And even with his minutes, I'll be interested to see what they do on this road trip and back to backs. And like, look, we knew coming in that was a thing that. One of your first questions they had was like, are you playing back to back this year? Because it was legitimately a good question. Who knows?
And I think he's playing the most of the last like 4 or 5 years, to be honest. I'll look at his numbers right now, but like it is crazy. But he has been surprisingly consistent. So at the same time, and the fit is there with Jaylen and Tatum. Mm-hmm. And obviously you don't want to pay him this much, but like, is he someone, if you still can't get absolutely anything for him in a deal, then it's like, all right, maybe you do keep, just kind of write it out next year just to have him as a trade chip for a big deal down the line if it materializes. And if it doesn't, and Al Horford wants to play for, a couple $1 million a year for however long he wants to play for after his contract expires, that might not be the worst thing in the world either.
The crazy part is I think his guarantee date isn't until the cut down date next year. But I'm telling you, there's no way there will be a
that would be
there. If I am Al Horford's agent, I am not going into next season with that date. I guarantee it'll move, and that a firmer path will be declared before that point. So I think the Celtics are, I'm fine with if they wait till the summer, but before the start of next season, it's going to either be you find a trade that involves Al, or you just cut and eat the money, and that's not ideal either. Or I guess there's always path C is like you just bring them back and ride it out for 26 or whatever. And it's not the worst thing depending on what the structure of your team is. But yeah, it's just again, it all comes down to asset management. And if you're not an elite contender, you need to maximize every chip you've got, because that's one thing the Celtics have not done over the last 4 years. And that's going to mean some tough decisions.
It is. And I mean, if you are talking about flexibility, if that's what they're, especially going into next summer, where I think only like 4 teams in the NBA have legitimate cap space as of now, that obviously can change in a hurry with, some blockbuster deals at the deadline, or teams just obviously throwing.
But there'll be no more attractive situation.
Right.
And, so could you take a floater on a restricted guy, do the Lonzo Ball, situation? Like there's paths to like, and in that instance too, like there is a path where you still have Al and Jaylen and Jason, and maybe move on, and Marcus and Robb and Neesmith and Pritchard and maybe Romeo. And you can still get an $18 million dude. And it's just a matter of, is that the best? Is that enough?
Right.
Based on what we've seen, is one more offensive weapon enough to push you over the top? I don't know if I know the answer to that yet. I suspect I do. I suspect they need something much more, but we'll find out. That's part of what the learning process is this year, and where the Jays go from here.
So beyond, we're talking about, again, the offense on this trip. We've talked about the minutes already. What else are you looking for on this trip, whether it's from a coaching standpoint, just an evaluation standpoint of the bench? What else is there?
I just think, like you said, you were like, you had said that 2 and 3 would be an okay trip. And I don't disagree. Like in general, I think these West Coast trips, you look at how teams fare on it. Like Atlanta went west early in the season, and got their doors blown off. And they're like a really good team. They came back home and it's like they figured it out. The Celtics found that out when they were down there. And so, how do the Celtics respond? Again, I think the availability of players will help. No LeBron, no McCollum. There's going to be some breaks that you maybe didn't anticipate going out there. Utah has been strangely bad at home this year. They lost to New Orleans and Memphis. They were 31-5 at home last year, and they've already got 4 home losses. And it's just weird because that's usually a really tough place to play just because of the, Perk was saying it last night. Not only everyone thinks about Denver, Utah is just always a strange place to play. One, because the people are so damn rowdy. And then there is atmosphere issues there too. So I don't know. I think I want to see them. 2-game winning streak feels like about as good as it's gotten for this team. How can you build off that? And I just want to see the offensive progression. Okay, if you do have some better semblance of health and Jaylen's the wild card and all that, do we start to see a little bit more cohesion, especially from the bench group? If there's more, firmness in their roles, can Grant keep shooting as well as he has, if he's in a diminished role? What becomes of Romeo if he does have nights where he's a DNP? Does Freedom ring for even longer than what we've seen? And who else am I forgetting on the bench? Oh, even Schroeder. Schroeder's obviously kind of throttled down with less of a role. But if you can bring Marcus's minutes down and bring him up, and maybe you find the balance there. So yeah, my biggest question when you say coaching, I think my biggest thing with Ime is just late game execution. Still, offensively, they just gotta get. I know he's following Brad Stevens, and I hate to nitpick. But Brad was at the end of the day, if they needed a play to at least get a good look, he could draw up something. Every ATO was at least, I'm sure there was bad ones, but it felt like every ATO was a good one. And I just want to see him take strides. We know Ime is a good enough coach to shake this team out of its early season doldrums and get them back to being a top 5 defense, which is, again, the fact that they're 4th in the NBA, despite that miserable start, is truly astounding. So what can he do on the offensive side? Did Will Hardy run offense in San Antonio? Is there any offensive minded coaches? Can Damon Stoudemire maybe go get his playbook from his playing days? I just need one of these coaches to embrace what they've got. And I know Tatum struggled, and I know Jaylen's hamstring, but there's got to be a way to get more out of this group beyond even just kind of crossing your fingers that your star players can carry you.
It's interesting from that. Yeah. I think that's it. I think the offense, because I think it's a matter of, if the offense doesn't show signs of coming together here, then I do think trades are coming, even if it's just addition by subtraction trades in terms of taking, because like you said, you can check off a number of boxes by doing that, both planning for the future and developing in the present, and maybe getting some more offensively inclined or better fits, as opposed to now where it's just, you have a lot of defense first guys, which you might not need all of them. And if you're not going to be able to retain them regardless, then what can you get for them? What doors does that open for your offense when, one of them is somewhere else and someone else gets a chance in the rotation that, defense is respect a little more. So that's something where at least, you'll be playing the teams that you'll get an adequate read on that stuff in the next few weeks. But that's something where I want to say that needs to be taken care of. And with the late game stuff for Ime, he seems, he's pretty anti-timeout late in these games, which is fine, I guess, when the game plan is just,
if you're not going to draw up something that works,
right? There's all right, just let it
go.
Go after the weaker defender, wherever it is. But if they're not calling, if they're not getting the whistle in game, you when things go awry in the middle of the possession, a la Schroeder when he got stuck in the paint, just call a timeout there. Just bring it in, especially when you have
Brad was never afraid to call a timeout with 7 on the clock, because he knew he could sketch something up that would negate that. And I want Ime to have that same confidence where, sometimes you have to save your players from themselves. And so if they're not going to run a good set, if they're not going to find the right action, then, then say, okay, here, we got 7 seconds. Here's what we're doing. And don't call just an isolation elbow jumper.
All right. Final question. Are you mad that Robb might not be the closing time 5
Well, all right. All right. I didn't know you were going to hurt feelings on this program today. Yeah, I was a little, I was a little rattled last night watching it. I do like that Robb can be okay with that and then go in there and be the hero on the final play. So I'll live with it. I do think it was maybe a little bit matchup based because, obviously they're not going to put him in there. I mean, if you even looking at the defensive numbers this morning, it was crazy how much they protected him from having to go against Embiid. And we saw it last season. Like, he was a foul magnet and they couldn't keep him on the floor. And credit to the staff. I thought they had, it was a little mix of like everything that worked in the past, sending the weak side defender to like rattle Embiid and not get easy catches, but also like leaning on Horford and not letting Robb get in foul trouble. They clearly learned from the last few seasons. I feel like maybe Brad Stevens dropped in and said, hey, just a couple hints right here. Let me lay this out for you. I think more often than not, Robb will be out there in those situations. But look, for a team that's anemic offensively, if you got to go offense, defense, that's where I want to use. That's where maybe you use your timeouts, right? Like if you want to get Schroeder in there for an offensive set, fine. Call timeout, draw something up, and see what happens. But I think more often than not, he'll be out there.
Well, time will tell. We're gonna find out Friday night, Salt Lake City. Chris Forsberg will not be on the ground. He will be.
No, I almost was.
I
haven't. Still, the gameless streak continues. I think you might see me eventually, but yeah. I mean, I don't know if Utah was the place to dive back in. I'm trying to think. Did you go to that Brazilian steakhouse with us, or was that just me and Jay and
no? I heard about this one though.
Yeah, I think it was Kelly Olynyk approved. Yes. There's like a random strip mall with a great Brazilian steakhouse, and Jay ate something crazy like pig's ears or something like that, which you shouldn't get at a Brazilian steakhouse. But I don't think anyone got sick, and I do miss Utah a little bit. Like that was great for summer league, except for Gordon Hayward ruining. Let's end on this because this will be fun. Did you see Gordon Hayward? So I think we all still follow Gordon Hayward's wife on Instagram, and she posted something. One of their daughters put, if she had one wish, it would be to go back to Boston. And I had like 14 people. I had 14 people slide into my mentions. They're like, Gordon Hayward wants to come back to Boston. I was like, no. I think her name is Bernie. I'm like, Bernie would like to come back to Boston. I do not think Gordon Hayward would like to come back to Boston, but Boston sure needs a player like Gordon Hayward.
Horford for Hayward at the trade deadline. That's the deal right there. You heard it here first.
Wouldn't that be amazing? And like Horford kind of makes sense for them.
Right, it does. They need a big man down there. Stay tuned for that. All right, Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. Breaking news about Hayward's desire to come back to town. Here on the Winning Plays Pod as we wrap up. We'll get back with you guys next week to. It's gonna be a long trip.
They'll bring a real heavy hitter in for that one.
Real heavy hitter. We'll see if Chris is available. We'll see if he's got to take Kemba for.
We'll see how Robb does.
Yeah, see how Robb does. Robb will want it. Chris will be checking in after each game if Robb is in crunch time. So stay tuned to that. In the meantime, rate, review, subscribe, Winning Plays Pod, and we will talk to you guys next week.